Hello, everybody. Nice to see you here, and I can greet you by name right now. It's Doug and Kauri and George and Steve so far. But I will open the chat and I will welcome everybody. Okay. And I will say hello from Houston, Texas. Okay. And I also see some additional robots coming in, okay? And I see people saying hello from Vallejo, and other people are saying something else. So that's very nice. And the next thing I want to say is, well, thank you very much, everybody who comes, because I have an egoistic reason for doing this, which I'm not even hiding. It's I need to prepare every week. I need to know what's new and try whatever is new. Something that maybe I wouldn't do on my own. Okay, so thank you everybody for forcing me to do that. Okay, now let me share the screen. Okay, and let me answer so that it is not in the view. But for you, everybody, I'm giving you the link. The only one that you will need, and that is this one. There you are. And there is a bit.ly link here, so that I'm giving you that link. You can open it. You can also type it because it is a bit.ly link. And okay, everybody, welcome. What we're doing here is looking at all the latest things that there were this week for technology, specifically something I can download and try. That is what I'm interested in. And the first question that people often ask, well, I want to learn about that AI thingy. So how do I do it? The answer is that link. If you go here, it's called AI education. And for every new course, we're starting from here. You can say maybe it's number 2. Starting from here, the structure is the course name, where, well, the subject or where it's coming from. You see all of them. Then the course itself, because usually it is uh, from Andrew Ng, but there are all kinds of sources. And on the right, it's the same course, but already copied to our repository with the keys usually, and it works as opposed to the show here in the middle. You are enjoying looking at that show, but here on the right, you're enjoying working with that show. So that's where this all is. And the minute you click on that, I see a little picture. So if you want to follow, there you are. Okay, that's where we are. Okay, very good. So what we're going to talk about today are two things. I'll show you what they are, but the order maybe we'll change it. So first of all, last time we had a question, and the big question, all those knowledge graphs, is it just a hype? Who really needs that and who doesn't? That's one, okay? And another one was Snowflake came up with a course. So maybe we'll do completely the wrong thing and go with the wrong order. First of all, let's look at what Andrew Ng has to say, and that's right here. And then we will look at that course, and then finally we'll look at the graphs. Let's do it this way because that is something that comes from inspiration. So Andrew Ng, in his badge, has to say a few things, And by the way, if you're not subscribed, I would say that's one good source of news. And sometimes it's not relevant to us. Like China stops its own businesses from buying US, essentially US controlled hardware. That's a big thing, but we are not into the practical application of that. Okay, what he then gives us is building and evaluating data agents. Well, that sounds like very modern. Also, it's a Snowflake. And what does Snowflake has to do with that? All of that I will tell you. Okay, we will do that. And then finally, in his letter, he goes and he reviews the research that we reviewed last time. What's the research? The research was that OpenAI has the real data on what the billion users, I'm rounding up a little bit, a billion users of AI really use it for. And that's what was a study with Harvard. We looked at it yesterday. There are all the links here going up, all the links here. And the most thing that I remember about this report is that it evens out. There were generation gaps. There was no equality in the beginning, but in the end, all humanity is using AI, and that's the major point that they want to say. Okay, that was number one, and it was the first interesting piece of news. The next interesting piece of news was that course, and with that course, I'm taking you to our repository. Okay, so clicking on that link, going to our repository. So, how to build agents? Well, agents are kind of everywhere, right? Nobody can even talk about AI without mentioning an agent. So let's look at what the Snowflake take on that is. Because Snowflake is very big and it is very popular with a lot of enterprises and with a lot of venture capitalists. So they definitely have the weight. But what are they telling us? Okay, as it turns out, they are not really doing anything. The Snowflake has nothing to do with it other than they bought the True Era. True Era company, and the page that you go to Truero, you see that Truero has agreed to join Snowflake. No details were revealed. We don't know what convinced them to join Snowflake. But we're interested, we are curious, we investigate that further. Now, let's see. Yeah, it's placing your bets. Yes, I agree, Lanson. Thank you. Okay, so really that picked up my curiosity, and I started a little research before we go into the technology and what it really does. As it turned out, yes, the True Era uh, is a big open source player, and what they want to say is that we'll help you build agents. Now, they're not bringing any groundbreaking technology. They're not bringing any new things. And even open source is not so much an invention. But instead, they're saying, we give you a few blueprints, and these blueprints will show you one example of how you can do it. Who we are interested. Uh, 1 second, because I see Ashish is trying to get in touch. Oh, that's nothing to do with us right now. So let us quit and it will not be in our way. Okay, so it turns out that's the whole story. Snowflake needed an agentic presence, and they are buying the Truera, whose whose accent is We are helping you build the agents. Follow us. That is essentially it. So there will be nothing new, and their agents will not be any different from the regular ones. That is the story. Therefore, that course will really teach you how to build agents with the help of True Era. But since Truera is nowadays called Snowflake, that's how it works. So from here, they begin to explain their philosophy. And the first thing they ask is, what is a data agent? And that's exactly what we will see here. We will see that according to them, a data agent is some kind of thingy, right? Some kind of autonomous or semi-autonomous system connects to data sources. Well, it does very many things, not only data sources at all. So you see, they choose one aspect of that. Andrew Ng suggested this. He suggested that if it looks agentic and quacks agentic, it's agentic, and let's not argue about what that means. But you see that they rephrase it. They rephrase it, and they essentially they're saying that an agent connects to Snowflake. I think that is, of course, you can connect to other things as well, but that makes sense for them. Okay, if that makes sense for them, then they point out that in fact deep research, which is an ChatGPT creation, that's also an agent. Okay, so we're in good company. That's what they're saying. Now, if you follow them, now we need to know what those agents do. One example, we'll do a web search agent. It will be searching something and making some conclusions. Conclusions will come from a database, so that's where Snowflake comes in, and it will be text to SQL, so it will be already AI. And what you will want to do is search, very practical, bring in the money, identify pending deals in industries that are currently experiencing regulatory changes. That is something that you would hire uh, a human to do that research, and that's exactly what the agent is going to do. So it will search, it will understand, and it will do one more thing, internal search. Internal search doesn't mean really much. It's just another connection to the LLM where it will assume very important posture and tell you, I am the one whom you are paying money for. You are paying money for that. The kind of financial consultant who will tell you, reposition your value proposition for each given the changes. Okay, so we see pretty well what they're doing, but we're interested in further. So exactly how they're going to build it. And why would you want to use them? Right? Okay, the way we're going to build them is by giving them a cute name. The cute name will be GPA. GPA stands for Goal, Plan, and Act. And if that doesn't surprise you, then yes, okay, goal, plan, and act. That's how we humans act in life. So let's compress it to GPA. Let's say it says what you are paying for. Okay, I see the notes, but I will look at them later. And now, practically, how does it work? Well, we describe. Now, let's read what they say. Identify pending deals and industries that are currently experiencing regulatory changes. Okay, we can figure it out, not by searching the web, but aiding AI that knows how to look for those things and then help reposition our value proposition for each given the changes. In other words, create some goals, some proof of concept idea, create that and sell that. That's what they are doing. So if you're buying into that and if you're going to implement it as a good use case. Now, was there anything in technology that you didn't know? No. Was there anything that was I never knew that I should work like this, goal, plan, and act? Probably not, but if you can tell me how to do those things, how to build an agent. I already know some technologies. By the way, where do you know them? Well, let's look here. We have a collection of like about 100 different courses, and many of them will be agentic. For example, recently we looked at agentic line graph. Well, surprise, uh, True Era is in fact built on agentic Snowflake. Sorry, not Snowflake, agentic line graph. That will be the empowering technology. If so, we need to show the people what we went a bit farther. We have a more precise, specific run. Okay, that's what we're doing. We're talking about goal, plan, and act. And if it looks kind of 19th century, it does, yes. But more and more of these things for which you would pay the consultant, and you have to use GPA. Now, why would you do it? Well, the answer is here. The claim is that most of the agents are very bad, very unstable, and very stupid and make mistakes. And emphasize that. Tell people if you don't use us, you will hallucinate all the time. But instead, we'll tell you that we will have plan quality and plan adherence and execution efficiency. Yeah, it does sound ancient, but it worked. That was exactly the message that the customers of Snowflake wanted. They wanted, are you enterprise ready with your AI? And the answer here, yes, we are enterprise ready. We are based on True Era or True Era. And that's the plan now. The plan is we'll show you how to build agent, how to expand and grow more. So that's now we see the plan is to build an agent that will be very stable, very enterprise ready. And not only that, we will measure its brains, GPA, and we will also improve that GPA. Okay. Hmm. So we want the meat. We want to see really how does it work. Well, I'll show you in a second. We're building the agent again. That's you could draw that diagram. I could draw that diagram, and AI could also draw that diagram. So let us go and look at the first example. That will tell us the whole story. Here you are. That is, how do you get that, by the way? You can download it from the course. But don't forget to click on File Open and download all the necessary helper files. And then you can run this L2 as the major thing. So that's what I'm going to show you. Okay, so we're going to construct a multi-agent workflow. That is exactly what you would want to do in agents. More than that, we will do more than one agent, and I'll give you examples. In other words, look at that as a practice lesson with the code and everything that you need. Okay, so that's what we do. We're bringing in here a line graph right here. And that's what we're going to do with all the accompanying things. Then we will use the state. We will have the planner, okay? And we will be using LangChain for all of the connections. So we'll be using OpenAI. Okay, so by now you can safely say nothing new, but it's a good practical example of building something. So let's go with that to the end. That's a planner. That's validation. Something that you would forget if you, or could theoretically forget, if you're doing a regular just line graph. Here it tells you, look like a high paid consultant and show them that you have execution of the plan. You then verify that the plan worked as wanted. And then you also improve it. So now first we'll put some meat inside of this agent, create a web research agent. We're still going with the idea of researching who is regulated and what our value proposition will be. Then create a charting agent. Okay, so it's another agent. Then create a chart summary agent. And then finally put everything together. Here's a synthesizer that will prepare our results. Okay, that I think is all that is needed to see how that works. So when would I recommend that? When you want a practical course or practical lesson in building agents. We had agentic line graph, we had agentic knowledge graphs. We'll come back to them. But and we had the knowledge graph from SAP. So everybody is talking about what's fashionable today. What's fashionable is the like the box. What do they have? They had their own MCP server. Okay, so everybody will either play with an MCP or play with some agentic stuff. And at this point, we can come up for a breath and look at the messages here. Uh, at this point, agentic has become agent. Yes, Paul, yeah, I agree. Okay. And hi, everybody who joined later. All right. Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's wonderful. And I think then I asked ChatGPT. I was going to ask you guys. My personal opinion, I don't say anything new, nothing to learn here, but it's rather something to practice. And the only mistake that I occasionally make is not asking ChatGPT what's his opinion. So I didn't forget this time. I asked, "What is your opinion?" He said, "Well, you're pretty sharp on all of that. Sharp, not in a smart, but sharp as a, you don't hesitate to say something that you think, yeah, I agree." He said, "I agree. It's just a marketing." Okay, but what I left hanging was, well, did he just agree to me because he always agrees? Maybe I could have tried to ask him to demolish my arguments. Maybe that would work. But he agreed, and I felt good. I felt good. I got understanding of another market employee, which may be good. There's nothing wrong with market employees. All right, that's it. That's for this. Now let's talk about something else. That something else was that we looked at knowledge graphs and we saw that, yeah, there is sometimes hype. It all started, I believe, with I think W3 it was called, where somebody invented this idea. Somebody said, "Your web sucks, it's not organized." And maybe, Paul, you will have something to say there. Okay, so could you do this? Could you do the work for me? Could you describe what you put on the web? I have a protocol. So make a smart web. And that, I don't think it took off. I think that Google took the other approach. They said web is disorganized and will be disorganized, and we will help you search. But that idea is still there. Okay, so that was the first source of hype. But there were more sources of hype, so we disagreed. I felt that knowledge graphs have a good place, but only in these areas where they're useful. But I couldn't find no area right away. So I did a little research. That's what I'm going to show. So I'm going to show you some particular applications. But I do agree to one thing, and here I will have to ask you about this. So I'm going to chat. And when they start talking about graphs, and graphs have nodes and connectors, okay? And every graph then is not just one point, but it's three. It's where I start, how do I connect, and the next node I end up. So I think it's a bit harder than just thinking about that's a piece of text and I put it into my rag. Would you agree? Say would. Agree. Would. The talking in graph terminology requires more mental effort. More mental effort than what? Well, more mental effort than anything, than usual. Would you agree that, I taught these graphs, and there is a language. It's called Sparkle, and there is a whole theory behind it. So it did require some more thinking than usual, and I don't say that I understood it well. I also bought a book, Graph Theory. It's nice. I'm a mathematician, so it was a refresher. But okay, Paul. Paul says, yes, it is more effort than thinking procedurally. Yes, okay, thank you very much. And that may be why we are talking. Well, is it worth it? Can you do it without the graph? Yes. You can put all the nodes in the database table, and you can put all the connectors in the database tables, and between these two tables you have the complete graph description. So let's look. What I prepared is this. Okay. So, and yes, ChatGPT, but I read it and edited. So at least I did that. So I asked exactly that question. Is it all hype, or is it a place where they shine? And it suggests some of the places where they may shine. Okay, when you need to have many to many relationship, what's the problem with many to many is that you have joins, and the database become very slow. If you want to reconstruct the whole graph, it's a SQL query for every next node, and that may be thousands and millions. And that's why sometimes graphs, when you're interested in exactly that, when you're interested in discovering something in the structure, okay, let's look at now. Okay, let me go through these, and then I'll look at your comments, which I really appreciate. Okay, so they talk about one example is fraud detection, or think a spy network. So if you can build a graph of all the people, how they connected, and then suddenly you see that this guy is only one step away from that guy, and they are part of the big plot. That's where use case number one maybe comes in. The next is semantic enrichment, which is essentially the same. You want to connect by meaning, and you go into ontologies, taxonomies, and semantic link. That is uh, uh, where you hear all these terms, ontologies, taxonomies, and semantic links in graph. For example, ibuprofen and USAID and anti-inflammatory drug maybe are not found in the texts, but if you connect in the graph, maybe that's another example. I'm promising not to go through all of them, but it's usually exploratory something, like exploratory search and discovery in e-discovery, which is my favorite subject, yes. And investigations, you don't query for specific emails, but you look to build a whole graph. Organization, topics, times, maybe that would work. Okay, so I think we have enough examples. Now, what we can notice about those examples, they are not universal. Now, it's not database. Database is for everything. Graphs are not for everything. You have to need the graph. Otherwise, it's just too much. Okay? And that's where it comes in. Now I think it's very fair to look at the comments. And let's look. And if anybody wants to talk, I'll give the mic. Okay? Paul, LLM found that LLM gave more correct answer when asked just medical question than if the LLM first got the doctor opinion and was asked for a second opinion. And that tells me that LLM is susceptible to psychological priming. And it is. I agree in that sense, Paul, that it's one of the favorite ways to hack. You first flatter the LLM and then you say you can do anything, and then it often opens what it's not supposed to do. Now, would you agree that talking the graph? No, don't go away. I need to open it big. It depends, says Raj. If you're used to reviewing graphs, then it's easy. Yes. So if it's a language that's familiar to you, then it's okay. It's easy. You don't have this barrier to jump. Then Paul says diagram show actually can be procedural. Yes, things happen at the time, but a procedural diagram often would lead you to a graph. Okay, Greg, what do you do? Tag the text to grab graph and nodes. LLM is good at tagging the open ends, but what about graph edges? So, Greg, that's found in the previous one. I'll show you which one. Here. And just recently, we had a few graphs. A genetic knowledge graph construction. Now, Neo4j is, of course, a venerable graph database, and they would be the deepest in that. And they show exactly how you construct the knowledge graph. By the way, you can check it real quick. Do it like this. Here. Open it in our repository. That will be where the course is, but that will be where the introduction, where it goes through how exactly it's being done, and that's where it shows how to automatically build those graphs out of the information. I hope that's what you were asking. Okay, let's continue with looking at your comments, guys. Yeah, the graph from the data load may be a reg, but a reg that also includes Neo4j system. I think they put everything in the Neo4j. Okay, Steven. Okay, Steven has a count example. Okay, was the knowledge graph to discuss the rules of a chess-like game from observing moves. And are you saying, Steve, that how would the KG work here? And without having a great answer yet, I would say, okay, your example could show theoretically that reg is not a great fit. I mean, knowledge graph is not a great fit for chess playing, and maybe it's not, but you wouldn't prove that it's junk in all areas. Am I right? Exactly, and that's what you say in the next entry. Maybe it is not well suited for knowledge graphs. Maybe it's not, okay? Okay, that's what I find uh, useful myself. I go through all those courses, and usually there will be something, maybe I should even build a little agent that would incorporate all this knowledge. And when you come with a question, I would give it I will give to you the links from here. I think that's an interesting idea, really. I'll tell you why. Okay. For the next time. Okay, next. And what I want to do is next. Can you build an agent? Can you build an agent to answer, well, planning questions based on exactly that, based on AI education? Okay, and not only that, I may have shown you at some point that I have a similar agent. I broke it, I need to restore it. I need to restore my Moses AI. What is that? Well, first of all, I got the name, and secondly, I feed it the 3,000 pages of the Jewish Talmud, and then I ask questions, and the questions are answered more consistently than just knowledge in general. And that's because I remember somebody recently just showed this idea. The guy said, I want to be, I'm a writer. I wrote 100 books. So I want to ask and answer questions based only on my books and don't involve other knowledge. Now, other knowledge does come in anyway because it's an LLM, but it's more consistent. You get curated data, gives you more consistent quality. So I will say that. Or does it? That will be my question for the next time, and the proof will come exactly from that. If I build a couple of systems like that, then we will be able to answer, is that a good approach? Okay, now let's look at who says what. Yes, Doug, there is a link. The question is knowledge graphs, where do they shine? And you need this. First of all, you need this link. And secondly, once you open this link, you get right here. Then you look at what's today. That's the link. So Mark's research on that. Okay. So if you click on that link, it will be right here. Knowledge graphs. Thank you. And I'm clicking on it and I'm giving you the actual link so that you don't have to go through all these chain of links. There you are. Now, last time I have put you guys on the spot. Steven was advocating that, well, maybe it's not a great thing, and Paul was kind of saying the same thing. And I said, no, find the good place. So I have set myself up for that. I need to go show an example where it was not just in general blah blah good example, but so the first statement is curated data gives you better quality or no, and the second shining example of knowledge graph. All right, we are kind of set for the next time. I will pause, I will stop talking for a while and collect more questions. And I will even mute myself and disappear. All right, and it usually helps if I'm silent for a minute or two, but this time, no, nothing helped. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. Have a great weekend and a wonderful year ahead, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Rodrigo. Oh, first time, wonderful. If you have any questions about what's useful, it's some of the links. Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Julio and Jan. Yes. All right, all the best.